When I was a little girl, my mom told me of a floating city in Italy, a magical place of canals where people moved by boats instead of cars, a place rumored to one day be lost to the sea as the oceans rise. For 20 years, I have wanted to visit Venice, before it was too late. The day I dreamed of was finally here.
While Taylor dreamed of Venice, I dreamed of the Italian Dolomites, a bucket list destination ever since I picked up a camera as an adult and shot the Matterhorn. The best part? Venice is on the way to these majestic Italian Alps in Sud Tyrol. We could each accomplish our dreams on the same trip. As with many flights to Europe from Toronto, we caught a red-eye flight and were on our way to Italy. We only had 2 days in Venice before heading north to the mountains, to the Dolomites, so we wanted to make the most of it.
After we landed, we took an Ali Laguna, a kind of water taxi, to our accommodations so we could drop our bags off before heading to lunch along the canal. It was the perfect way to start the trip, getting food while watching a seagull float by.
After lunch, we headed over to the Piazza San Marco, but it was really busy, so we decided to continue on to the Libreria Acqua Alta, the bookstore with the books in the gondola. We both love reading, so it felt like a great way to start the trip.
This bookstore was high on my list of things I wanted to see when visiting Venice. As an avid reader, I thought it was really interesting that they kept books in gondolas to protect them from when it floods.
As with many places in Venice, the bookstore was very busy. This destination is quite popular, having become famous on social media, so the place was filled with people walking around the stacks. We found a bit of a break from the people when we went to the back of the store where you could actually go outside and look over the canals.
Venice is a very busy place, but we expected this. I read on someone's blog that if you look for a gondola in Dorsoduro, it is much less busy. So we decided to head to Dorsoduro to live out my childhood dreams of riding a gondola through the canals of Venice.
We walked towards Dorsoduro, exploring the city on our way during golden hour. I love the way the light filters through these ancient buildings.
When we got to Dorsoduro, I thought there would be a bunch of places to pick up a gondola, but turns out there was basically the one spot, so we walked around the neighborhood and ended up back where we started.
Riding a gondola is quite expensive, so I asked Taylor if she was certain she wanted to do this.
Since I had dreamed of riding a gondola in Venice since I was 6 years old, this was a very quick yes.
We boarded our gondola at sunset and floated through the canals for half an hour. I'm really glad we departed from Dorsoduro, as it felt way more serene. It was cool to get a perspective of Venice from the canal level, really giving me an understanding of how the city ebbs and flows with the tides. It was also wonderful seeing how much Taylor loved the experience. She was so happy.
I was prepared mentally that this could be an overhyped experience, but I was pleasantly surprised when it wasn't. Our ride was so nice and peaceful. We even ended up in the Grand Canal, watching boats go by and being in awe that I was on a gondola in Venice. It was surreal.
We had prioritized the gondola ride over dinner since we only had 2 days here, but we needed to eat. We headed to Trattoria ai Cugnai del 1911 and sat on the patio, near the Ponte dell'Accademmia, an iconic bridge in Venice.
This meal was so incredible. We split a caprese salad and each ordered the best lasagna ever. This was the perfect meal to finish off the perfect day.
We walked back over the bridge, Ponte dell'Accademmia, and happened to notice that the moon was almost completely full. I switched to astrophotography planning mode and discovered that the full moon would actually be tomorrow. What are the odds that we happened to be in Venice at the same time as the full moon, with the moon alignment perfectly rising over an iconic waterway in Venice? I knew I wanted to capture it.
It was our only full day in Venice, so we got up early and grabbed a cappuccino to go, walking back through San Marco Square to our destination, the Doge's Palace.
For centuries, the Doge's Palace was the seat of government and home to the Doge, the city's leader. It played a central role in Venetian politics and justice until the fall of the Republic in 1797. Its current Gothic structure dates back to the 14th century, and today it operates as a museum, showcasing Venice's rich history.
It's a video. Do you have anything to say to the Doge? The historic art was incredible and the views immaculate.
We had walked around this building many times, including when I visited with my family back in 2017, but it was another thing entirely to go inside. The architecture and art were amazing. The detail and scale of the rooms was one of the most impressive works of art I've ever seen. The Italians definitely know how to create.
There happened to be an exhibit by Anselm Kiefer called Queste scritte quando verranno bruciati daranno finalmente un po' di luce. These writings, when burned, will finally cast a little light. This was inspired by philosopher Andrea Amo.
The exhibit used themes of Venice's history, destruction, and rebirth, also using the city itself as a metaphor to reflect on universal ideas of power, human intervention, and the cyclical nature of creation and loss, mirroring the way the palace itself has been shaped by fire and renewal throughout the centuries. I really resonated with this exhibit and with the artist, as he was a former lawyer who had quit to pursue art, something I was very much considering, feeling burnt out from my job.
The latter symbolized the biblical connection between earth and heaven, representing humanity's aspiration to reach the divine, though they appeared fragile and precarious, suggesting the uncertainty and vulnerability of such ambitions. The shoes and clothes, along with other everyday objects like bicycles and shopping carts, evoke traces of human presence and memory, serving as reminders of lives disrupted or lost through cycles of destruction and renewal, and highlighting the personal cost of war and historical upheaval.
After finishing at the palace, we walked towards the Bridge of Sighs, reflecting on the heaviness of the exhibit we just experienced, but perhaps even more how that heaviness had aligned with how I felt with my career. It's amazing how art can show you truths from within.
In its day, the Bridge of Sighs was an enclosed passageway from the Doge's Palace to the prison. Prisoners would walk from their sentence in the palace courts through the bridge, but pausing to take in their last glimpse of Venice through its small barred windows.
Since our day was filled with more touristy activities, we took a break from the crowds to go find lunch off the beaten path, in a beautiful courtyard separate from the city. It was perfect.
After lunch and our break from the crowds, we went back to the piazza to visit St. Mark's Basilica. Callum had to check in his camera bag, so I stood in the very long line in the afternoon sun, hoping he would be back in time for our entry into the Basilica.
It wasn't too bad checking my bag. The lockers were right beside the Basilica, and it only cost a few euros. I decided to get some gelato for us while we waited in line to beat the heat.
Inside St. Mark's Basilica, we saw the horses of St. Mark. They were originally part of a monumental chariot group in Constantinople's Hippodrome, but were brought to Venice as spoils of the Fourth Crusade in 1204. They were installed on the facade of St. Mark's Basilica, where they became enduring emblems of Venetian triumph and prestige. It was cool to be in such a historic place.
From St. Mark's Basilica, you can also experience heightened views of Venice, overlooking the Venetian lagoon, St. Mark's Basin. It was cool to see the crowds flowing beneath us with the boats flowing on the canals, and also headed towards the island.
We eventually made our way down to the lagoon after exploring more of the area. Callum wanted to take a sunset time-lapse of the gondolas.
When I was here in 2017, I remembered watching one of the most beautiful sunsets of my life, overlooking a series of gondolas aligned with the island. I wanted to get a time-lapse of this sunset, seeing the boats move around as the sun dipped, with the Abbazia di San Giorgio Maggiore, a church, in the background. I also knew that Venice was on the sea, so I might be able to catch the tide moving in and out if we were there long enough. But I also wanted to capture the full moonrise with the Accademia location still fresh in my mind.
After a nice evening watching the sunset over the gondolas, we headed to dinner before going back to the Ponte dell'Accademmia for Callum to take a time-lapse of the moon rising above the canal.
Time-lapses are all about motion, a contrast between the micro-movements we see each moment in real time and the macro-movements we miss across the hours. I love this location, where I could capture the micro-movements of boats moving under the ancient Accademia Bridge, while also capturing the macro-movement of the full moon rising over the Chiesa del Santissimo Redentore, a monument to the Black Death that plagued Europe. Another reason I love time lapses is that they force me to stay in one location for an extended period of time. It was serene to watch the boats move around as people moved over the bridge and I chatted with Taylor. It was the perfect way to finish our time in Venice, helping me relax from the stresses of work and mentally prepare for the time lapses I wanted to capture in the Dolomites.
It was actually nice spending a couple of hours on the bridge, people watching and waiting for the moon before heading back for our final sleep in Venice. Just a quick note to confirm that the room you are staying in is actually not on the ground floor, as ground floor rooms can flood and have mold issues. I thought I booked a room that was on the top floor of a building, but it ended up being in the ground floor and the smell was horrible. The next morning we woke up early again to check out.
There were a lot of stairs on our walk to the bus, on the bridges over the canals, so we were often switching between wheeling our suitcases and lifting them up the stairs. This is not a place where you can just Uber to your destination.
We were up early enough that we even saw the garbage collectors pushing their carts through the small streets and putting trash bags into their carts. The garbage collection process in Venice is actually quite fascinating, and I suggest looking it up.
We were tight on time, but still managed to stop for a quick pastry and cappuccino before catching our bus and missing our stop. But more on that in our next video.
I'm thankful I was finally able to live out my dream of seeing Venice, riding in a gondola, and taking in the history the city has to offer.
And I'm thankful that I got to come back to this wonderful place in preparation for heading to a place that I had always dreamed of going, the Italian Dolomites. If you liked this video, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with a friend. We're working on making YouTube our full-time careers, so any support you can give us is very much appreciated.
If you would like to do this trip, check out our itinerary in the description below.
See you in the Dolomites.
Bye for now.
What up?
Ciao.
Ciao.